Have you ever woken up and just felt empty? Not because it was a bad day or bad news, but simply because the drive to go anywhere, be anyone, or even call someone just wasn't there. It wasn't sadness, it was more like a quiet realization. I don't have to. For a while I brushed it off as just old age setting in, thinking I was simply retreating into myself. But then a powerful realization hit me. No, this isn't weakness, this is pure liberation. I'm a woman in my early 60s, living a peaceful life right here in Santa Rosa, California. And for the past few years, I've simply stopped making those social rounds. It's not because I've had fallouts or become a grumpy old soul. No, I just clearly saw that constant social obligations, hollow conversations, and the weight of other people's expectations weren't adding anything to my life anymore. They were just taking away. And guess what? I don't regret it for a second. This choice comes from some really honest places within me, and today I want to share them with you. My goal isn't to convince you to do the same, but just to open up. Maybe some of you will truly see yourselves in what I say, or perhaps, just perhaps, someone will finally breathe freely for the very first time in a long while. You know, here's something I've observed. As we mature, our circle of friends and connections should, in theory, grow deeper, more heartfelt. But for some reason, it often gets more surface level. People show up not because they genuinely want to be there, but out of some vague sense of obligation. They gather for holidays, make those birthday calls, and toss out a "how are you" just to check off a box. Honestly, it's not really about you, it's about them easing their own conscience. I vividly remember sitting down after one of those visits, you know, where folks arrive, spend an hour glued to their phones, chatting about traffic or someone else's new car. And out of nowhere, it hit me. Why am I doing this? Why do I need this? What was the point of plastering on a smile, baking pies, pretending everything was business as usual? Was it just because that's what you do? Because how can you just sit by yourself? Yet for me, being alone felt wonderful. It was genuinely peaceful, calm, and true. So I started gently turning down invitations, calmly, respectfully, without trying to cause any offence. Some folks understood, others didn't quite get it, and some just disappeared. And here's the most fascinating part. The ones who faded away were truly the least essential. They didn't vanish because I had changed. It was because they had always just needed to see their own reflection in my eyes. And then it just clicked for me. I don't need the constant noise, the put-on smiles, the lengthy conversations that go nowhere, or the hollow promises. I no longer want to spend my precious energy trying to prop up the illusion of connection when, deep down, there's absolutely nothing left of that bond. Sometimes you spend your entire life trying to be the good one for neighbours, acquaintances, and family members. You agree to meetups, conversations, and road trips, but then, at some point, you settle into your favourite armchair, glance at the clock, and a thought pops into your head. I could have just curled up with a book, taken a long walk, or simply savoured the quiet, and I would have been so much happier. It took me a while to truly be honest with myself and say, I no longer need to visit people just because they were once part of my life. It was terrifying, honestly, to feel that you no longer owe anyone anything. No elaborate explanations, no obligatory invitations, no forced answers. This is a profound freedom you truly have to grow into. Folks often remark to me, "You've really withdrawn, you're isolating yourself. It's not healthy to pull away from social interaction." But for me, I think it's far unhealthier to betray your own spirit. It's unhealthy to make yourself do things that don't genuinely come from your heart. I can absolutely still connect with someone who truly needs a conversation, but I no longer expend myself on those who only showed up to hear themselves talk. And when I stopped driving to various houses, sitting in strangers' kitchens, listening to endless gossip and grievances, I suddenly felt my energy flood back. I no longer came home utterly drained with this heavy weight on my shoulders. I started sleeping sounder, took more solitary walks, and actually noticed the sweet scent of the linden trees in the park, a fragrance I hadn't truly experienced in years. Some might label this loneliness, but for me, it's finally true, profound solitude, the kind where you discover not emptiness, but your truest self, where you can truly hear your own heart beating, where there's absolutely no need to perform or justify a thing. When I chose peace, it wasn't a rejection of people. It meant I simply stopped living to meet others' expectations. I began living entirely at my own rhythm, and that rhythm became so much gentler, so much kinder to my own spirit. Perhaps it's at this stage of life that we can finally allow ourselves to be completely honest, not for anyone else's benefit, but purely for our own. And this isn't about arrogance or pride. It's profoundly about self-care, about honouring your time, about cherishing your sacred silence. And now, having stepped away from being an obligatory participant in every gathering, every call, every casual get-together, I feel as if a tremendous weight has been utterly lifted from my shoulders. I've become genuinely more attentive to those who are truly close, not out of old habit, but from a place deep in my heart. While they might be few, my connections with them are authentic and deep. So that's what happened. I stopped visiting people, and with each passing year I realised more profoundly this was one of the wisest, most liberating decisions I've ever made. Next, I'll share why this isn't about abandoning life, but about a powerful return to your truest self. We've already touched on the incredible lightness that washes over you when you release what's no longer serving you. Now, I want to delve a bit deeper into radical honesty in relationships, that profound sincerity that's so often overlooked, yet without it, everything eventually crumbles. You know, what truly hit me when I began declining those extra social engagements? It's that genuine closeness doesn't demand scheduled visits. It's not measured by how often you call or the endless stream of messages in a chat. True closeness is when, even in the deepest silence, you can feel it. You're remembered, you're respected, you're not bothered unnecessarily. And if you're suddenly needed, they'll just show up. No pretense, no drama. Simply because being there comes from a place of pure love. When I was younger, I truly believed that relationships needed to be constantly fueled, like a fire in a hearth. If you didn't keep adding logs, it would simply die out. And I did just that. I travelled, I called, I meticulously remembered every birthday. I patiently endured countless empty conversations, all just to keep that flame from extinguishing. But now, looking back, I grasp that sometimes I was actually stoking someone else's fire. They were feeling the warmth, not me. And then there comes a pivotal moment when you finally ask yourself, why? What was the real purpose of all this? And you grasp most of those fires were never truly for you in the first place. They served to maintain the illusion that you had a vibrant circle, that you weren't alone, that you were deeply connected. But in reality, it was a circle where you often just tolerated and where you'd been profoundly alone all along. That's when I stopped knocking on other people's doors if I didn't sense genuine warmth there. This doesn't mean I became closed off. I simply stopped squandering my precious time. I cultivated only those connections in my life where I never had to explain why I didn't feel like talking today, where genuine understanding existed even in my silence. You know, here's another fascinating thing. The moment you start telling people honestly, I'm exhausted, I just don't feel like it, I'm choosing quiet right now. So many get completely flustered. They're utterly unaccustomed to such raw honesty. They're used to those polite evasions, flimsy excuses and feigned courtesy. And then suddenly it's real, not aggressive, not accusatory, just authentically human. And for them it can be a real jolt because your honesty shines a bright light on their own habit of living, within pretense, formalities, and that's just how things are done. But here's the most beautiful part of it all. The people who truly value you, they remain. They understand, they don't take offence, and in fact they respect you even more. They're often tired of the pretense too. It's just that not everyone has the courage to voice it. Since I started seeing people less frequently, my life has been infused with so much more breathing room, more expansive space. I began truly noticing things that used to completely elude me. The quiet whisper of the wind through the tall pines, how the dawn gently paints itself across my windowsill, the sheer pleasure of brewing tea in absolute stillness. I used to dismiss such moments as sheer boredom, but now I know this is genuine living. I no longer have to maintain a facade. I don't have to engage in conversations that utterly bore me just to avoid ruffling someone's feathers. I don't have to absorb endless complaints from people who have no real intention of solving their own problems. They just got into the habit of complaining, and I'm no longer obligated to be their personal sounding board. I stopped being a human tissue. I became authentically myself. Some might argue, so you've just shut yourself off. No, I actually opened up. Just not to everyone, but profoundly to myself. I came to understand that my time is absolutely precious, and it's truly finite. I refuse to squander it on anything that doesn't genuinely bring me warmth. I don't need to be everywhere. I don't need to constantly justify or live up to other people's expectations. I finally have the inherent right to choose who I talk to, what we discuss, and whether I even need that interaction at all. There's a profound, unique maturity that settles in with this. It's not something that comes with a specific age on your ID, but rather with lived experience. You stop fearing loneliness, because loneliness isn't an adversary, it's a profound mirror. It reveals exactly who you are. And if you find genuine contentment when you're alone with yourself, it means you've truly discovered inner harmony. I also finally shed that pervasive guilt, the kind that was subtly imposed for years. How can you not go visit? How can you not call back? How can you not keep the conversation going? But why? Why on earth should I drain my energy and emotions simply because someone else decided that's the right way to be? I finally started truly listening to myself, my desires, my body's signals, my very mood. And once I began living in a rhythm that genuinely suited me, I found myself with more energy, even more joy, because I no longer had to talk myself into doing things that directly conflicted with my inner state. And what's most significant, I began noticing how incredibly profound those few conversations I still held became. With those who are truly precious, with those who genuinely know how to listen, not just talk over you, with those who aren't afraid of silence within a conversation because they understand. It's far more vital to feel the connection than to desperately fill every pause with words. I stopped making those social rounds, and in doing so, grew infinitely closer to myself. This isn't about retreating from the world. It's a powerful return to the present moment. This isn't loneliness. This is absolute freedom. And, within this freedom, I suddenly learnt to truly hear myself. And with that, I stopped carrying other people's drama on my shoulders. There's an immense strength in this, one I never even suspected before. Perhaps one of the most vital lessons I've absorbed during this time is don't carry other people's pain. You know how it goes. You drop by someone's place, supposedly just for a cup of tea, a little chat, and you leave with a crushing heaviness in your chest, a knot of anxiety, carrying some burden that isn't even yours, because that person just unloaded everything onto you, their grievances, their fears, their endless complaints, their anger at others, and you listened, you nodded, you tried to understand, and then you toss and turn all night in bed because you've absorbed it as your own. And before I truly thought that was empathy, that's just how you're supposed to be, present, listen, offer kind words. But now I understand. Empathy is being present, but not allowing yourself to melt away. When you dissolve under other people's emotions, when their problems become your problems, that's no longer empathy. That's pure self-destruction. For too long I struggled to set clear boundaries, and that's truly one of the primary reasons I stopped making those visits, Because if you don't know how to say enough or stop at the right moment, if you just let absolutely everything pour in unfiltered, you slowly transform into a mere receptacle where everyone else dumps their stuff. And eventually you yourself are left with no warmth, no real desire to live. And then one day it clicked. I have every right not to listen to endless laments. I have every right not to be someone else's emotional lightning rod. I can simply say, this is really tough for me to hear, or even, I'm not in a place to discuss this right now. And that, my friends, isn't selfish. That is profoundly self-care. When I truly stopped attending those gatherings where everything inevitably devolved into complaints about kids, about the healthcare system, about the neighbours, I suddenly noticed how much lighter I felt, how much easier it was to simply breathe. I began to rediscover that inherent lightness within myself, the one that, surprisingly, had always been there. I had simply buried it under everyone else's burdens. And I also started remembering what I used to love, what truly sparked my interest, what I genuinely longed for. When you're constantly rushing to other people's appointments, adapting to other people's conversations, you completely lose touch with yourself. But now I've started writing poetry again, jotting down notes, crafting short stories. I read so much more. Sometimes I simply sit by the window and observe. This is mine, and it brings me such deep joy. After all, no one ever promised that life would just halt after 60. On the contrary, if you've reached this stage, it means you've been granted a profound pause, a real one, free from the frantic race, free from obligations, free from all those shoulds. This is your chance to genuinely live for the very first time, from the depths of your own heart. And I have no desire to squander that on anything that doesn't bring me genuine warmth. Of course, sometimes someone from the past still reaches out, drops a line, or gives a call. But now I genuinely ask myself, do I truly want this connection? Am I genuinely happy to hear from this person? Or am I just worried about seeming rude? And if I don't want to, I simply don't answer, not out of spite, but out of pure honesty. I no longer play that old game of politeness that utterly suffocates inner freedom. And you know what's truly remarkable? I have so much more energy and genuine presence for those who are truly close. I listen more deeply to my granddaughter. I have more meaningful conversations with my son. They're often short to the point, but they come straight from the heart. Fewer words, far more meaning. I've learnt to truly value depth, not just sheer quantity. When you stop making those constant social rounds, you suddenly grasp a profound truth. You can still feel incredibly connected, even in silence. Within that quiet space, you can finally encounter the most vital person of all, yourself. And that's when a feeling I barely recognised before truly settled in, profound inner peace. Not a forced, performative, I'm perfectly happy, but a deep, tranquil stillness. I am truly content just as things are. Perhaps someone watching this right now is thinking, what if I stop too? What if everyone completely forgets about me? You know, I had those same fears. But then I realised, if they forget, they never truly remembered you in the first place. If they disappear, they were never genuinely there to begin with. A truly authentic connection can withstand long pauses. Real love doesn't demand constant presence. It simply is, and that warmth can be felt, even across any distance. I stopped visiting people, and in doing so, I truly freed up invaluable space in my life for myself, for the present moment, for pure peace. I didn't become a recluse. I became deeply honest with myself, with the precious time I have left. And that, I believe, is one of the most significant life-altering decisions I've ever made. We're not obligated to be everything to everyone, but we are obligated to be kind to ourselves, because if we don't, who will? You know, in these recent years, I often find myself pondering one crucial thought. Why didn't I start living like this sooner? Why did I spend so many years on surface-level politeness, on people-pleasing, on trying to meet expectations that weren't even genuinely mine? And I suppose the answer is quite simple. I lacked the courage. From childhood, we were conditioned. Be kind, be thoughtful, don't offend anyone, don't pull away, maintain those relationships, even if your very soul is screaming silently. And we tried year after year, but no one ever asked, what about you? Who will truly hear your voice if you're constantly just listening to everyone else? And now, with so much life experience under my belt, all the joys, the heartaches, the hopes, the losses, it's suddenly crystallized for me. Being utterly honest with yourself isn't a weakness. It's a profoundly mature, deeply earned, and richly deserved form of freedom. Now I live completely differently. I'm not afraid to wake up alone. I'm not afraid of the quiet stillness in my room. I'm not afraid that my calendar shows an empty meetings section. Because every single day I fill it not with obligatory visits, not with empty chatter, not with a list of shoulds, but with myself, my own thoughts, my own inner peace. When I settle by the window with a warm cup of tea and just watch the wind shepherd the clouds across the sky, I feel so profoundly alive. Not obligated, not needing to be needed, but simply alive. It's truly astonishing how little a person actually requires once they stop demanding themselves to conform to external, often alien standards. And I've also noticed that with age, a truly special depth emerges, one that's impossible to fully capture in words. It's an internal stillness, a profound quietness, from which genuine warmth naturally emanates. You no longer feel the urge to rush, to interrupt, to argue. You simply listen and truly hear, you look and genuinely see. And within this very silence, I discovered a form of connection I couldn't have imagined before, where a simple glance is enough for understanding, where you don't need to explain why you didn't show up, where everything is built on deep respect, without control, without lingering resentment, without any sense of imposition. Sometimes I still get calls. Not often, but they do ring. And I no longer feel a flicker of guilt if I don't pick up the phone right away, or even if I call back the next day. Because now I genuinely know how to take care of myself. I no longer feel compelled to rush to answer every single voice. I choose who to talk to when, and most importantly, why. Maybe it sounds a little unconventional, but I've started to feel love more acutely, more intensely than ever before. Not that frantic, demanding love of youth, but a serene, quiet love, like a gentle ray of sunshine warming an old windowsill. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it doesn't take offence. It simply exists within, and that, my dear friends, is more than enough. Once I was genuinely terrified of being lonely, but now I deeply understand. Loneliness only truly exists for those who haven't learned how to be present with themselves. And if you aren't your own adversary, you will never be genuinely alone. And perhaps this is the most fundamental reason why I no longer make those social calls. Because I finally discovered the one person I had avoided, for far too long. I found myself without the external noise, without the pressure of crowds, without needing anyone's approval. And let me tell you, that was an unbelievably warm, profound reunion. I don't need everyone to fully grasp me. I don't need everyone to agree with my choices. I'm simply sharing with you what I have personally experienced, what has become my bedrock. And perhaps someone listening right now will hear something profoundly resonant within this, something that whispers quietly but clearly. You are not alone. It's absolutely okay. You have every right to choose and to be authentically yourself. If you find yourself feeling drained by other people's conversations, don't be afraid to gently step away. If you don't feel like answering a call, don't. If your soul yearns for quiet more than noise, then embrace that silence wholeheartedly. It, too, is vibrantly alive. Life after 60 isn't a fading sunset. It's a beautiful, tranquil evening. And in the evening, as we all know, the most comforting lights are often kindled. And each of us gets to choose. Will we continue to frantically bustle in the crowd, or will we brew a warm cup of tea, wrap ourselves in a cosy blanket and simply sit in our favourite armchair, listening to the gentle rhythm of the ticking clock. I chose the latter. And honestly, I don't regret a single thing. If what I've said resonates with you, write a few words in the comments. I'd be happy to know you felt it. Please support the video with a like. It helps other people find it. And if you like, subscribe to the channel. Here we talk about life without rushing, genuinely. I wish you the healing silence and people who don't demand, and most importantly, peace within. Because at any age there's room for warmth, especially if that warmth is your own.